The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Politics. I'm your host, Debra Hutchison. Our guest this week is Whitby Mayor Don Mitchell. How you doing? And thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Debra. Always a pleasure.
How's the family? Y'all keeping well?
Yeah, we're very fortunate and well, and my wife and I both are vaccinated now, so that's great. And the kids are doing well, grandkids are doing well, so far so good.
Oh, good. Okay, so now speaking of vaccinations, perhaps we can start with that, with the vaccine rollout. There's been a lot of talk about, is it being distributed equally? Is Durham getting enough of a supply? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the province has adjusted its distribution, based on the hotspots. And because Durham has done pretty well, and Whitby in particular has done, very well in terms of cases, that has lowered what's coming here because they've kept more for the hotspots, though there are some hotspots in Ajax and Pickering, of course. So personally, I think Christine Elliott, the health minister, said very recently that 80% of the cases are in 20% of the locations. I would think those figures are more like 90-10 or 95-5. I've always felt this was much more of a clustered situation, and you're not going to tackle those numbers until you get to where the clusters are. So that's what the province is trying to do, and it's a first time for them. It's a first time for all of us. I'm concerned about the new variants because they are hitting younger people. That's the original sort of COVID-19 was pretty strongly, the severe medical outcomes were heavily weighted to those not only over 85, but over 85 with multiple, comorbidities. So this is a concern. And you see these new variants, developing in other jurisdictions, Brazil particularly, and really hothouse conditions. So it's so important to get vaccinated and knock this down and get past this. We're not going to get our lives back until we get past this. So I just urge everyone to get vaccinated, and I'm deeply disappointed in seeing the protests. I can understand there's a lot of frustration and COVID fatigue over the long haul, but to see what's happening with these variants now, and the threat they potentially, will cause to our children and grandchildren. This is no time for that. I mean, we're being vaccinated. Roll up your sleeve. That's what you can do. Stay home. That's what you can do. And give us a month or two, and we should be good.
Now, speaking of those protests, of course, there have been anti-lockdown protests outside Durham Regional Headquarters in Whitby, and then more recently at
Baycliffe Park.
Yeah, at Baycliffe Park, or the Rocket Ship Park as it's known. You say you were deeply disappointed. There were a few charges laid. Do you think there should have been more laid, or did police handle it the right way?
Well, I've had a lot of discussions with the DRPS and Inspector Moot, and he's working closely with the chief. These are happening, around Durham Region, and we don't want to do. I know you're aware of the Peterborough incident when the sort of mayor and the MP and the MPPs got very sort of hostile to this, and they turned a protest of 60 people into a protest of 600. And I mean, the view of the DRPS, and I agree, is that this is what the protesters want. They want media, they want attention. So yeah, they've laid fines. My understanding is against the organizers have been at least in Whitby, at least 4 charges, minimum fine of $10,000 each. That adds up. So we it's hard. I know people want you to do something. By the way, the police don't have an arrest power under this restriction. The fine is all they have. I know people, well, there's some feeling that you should just, arrest people who are doing this and take them away, but they actually don't have that authority as we speak. And our bylaw are also out there, and they're, if there are other things being, if the parking is not proper or whatever, doing what they can to discourage it. But mainly everyone, if you're in the area, just keep your kids away. I think the strategy is sound to control them. You just don't give them the attention they want, and stay the course. Keep yourself and your kids safe. Stay at home, and we'll be good. We'll be good.
Now, we are, as you mentioned, in another stay-at-home order. There was a lot of criticism after that the Ontario government laid down the recent stay-at-home order. What were your thoughts?
So I mean, neither I nor Whitby Council nor Durham Regional Council have been entirely happy with, every aspect of how the province has managed the virus. I mean, we've passed resolutions saying we don't really think our restaurants are a source of, there's no evidence. The restrictions are inflexible. I mean, they closed all our soccer domes. There didn't seem to be any public health reason. And our medical officer health agreed there's no public health reason, but there was some inflexibility. But again, like, this is the first time for the province too. This is first for everyone. I mean, they're mapping their new course and they're trying to do their best. But whatever I think of the first phase right now, I think the stay-at-home order to a degree is we just have to knock this back. And even despite all these measures, the cases are starting to go down, but it's very, very slow. So now it looks like it may go beyond, into June. The talk is now, but we just have to get it knocked down. We just don't want to see, another mutation, that starts hitting even younger people, and then potentially even get outside of, the real effectiveness of the vaccinations we're getting now. So, it's a lot easier for me to stay at home than a lot of people, but even just staying at home is not that huge of an expectation when you look at historically the kind of sacrifices that were asked of people in this country and others for the common good. So stay at home. I mean, the senior governments have responded very well in terms of financial supports, individually and business-wise. Again, never perfect, but first time, and they've certainly worked together collaboratively. So stay at home, stay the course, and follow the guidelines, because we are really all in this together.
We hear that very often. We're in this together, and for the most part, I think people are doing their part. How busy has with these bylaw officers been, though, when people haven't been following?
Well, we've been busy. You're around a lot. It's mostly, the park situations, as it gets warmer, gets more challenging. Mm-hmm. And, you do see non-compliance. It's really hard for the parents with the young kids, and hard on the young kids, both in terms of just the lack of being able to socialize, and the loss of sports is really hits home, of course. But that's a situation. And I think the parents of the young, the kids understand the risks, and they need to stick with it a little longer. We're doing great. Our town's doing great. And I have every confidence in Dr. Kyle and Dr. McTavish and their team. They are very responsive. If you have a question about, when you can be vaccinated, what other options there are, they're just tremendous. I mean, very good communicators and very informed.
As far as Whitby's mass vaccination clinic, it is, of course, at McKinney. Are you happy with how things have been operating there?
I have heard essentially zero concerns.
Yeah.
So I take that as a very good thing.
I do too, actually.
Other than more people want to be vaccinated, and you get those specific situations, where you're pregnant and you want to be vaccinated, or you have another disease like a problem, like a lung problem, and you want to go up the list. And that must be really, really alarming when you're in those kind of individual scenarios. But I mean, they are too controlled by the provincial restrictions, which are always but by necessity, a broad brush.
Right. With just in keeping with the last stay-at-home order, a lot of people said if only they had come down harder and put this in place earlier when the weather wasn't as nice. Is it another case of too late? Should they have acted much sooner?
Well, I'm not.
And I know I'm being a back.
I'm not in a position to judge. Yeah. I mean, if I was saying something overall, I'm not certain that they factored in COVID fatigue as much as they should have. I mean, there were periods when, it seemed you could open up a little more. And certainly the general, there was always a lot of alarm. And there has been very little focus. There was very little focus through the most phase on medical outcomes. It was always on case counts. And I mean, I understand case counts and reproductivity rate and so on, but really if you're not getting really very ill from it, which younger people were not during the first phase, then it was just hard to see. It was hard to see the necessity for the severe restrictions. Now it's different. Now we're in the variants and we've entered a new wave of uncertainty and definitely a new risk to younger people. So now you have to err heavily on the side of caution right now.
We've only got about a minute before we have to go to break. You mentioned that Whitby's numbers have been incredibly good compared to other areas, but you're right. With the variants, we're seeing numbers now of infections in Whitby that we haven't seen.
Well, it's as Dr. Kyle indicates, I mean, the variants are hitting everyone harder, and young people in particular harder. So the numbers can only rise. So again, get your needle.
And stay at home when you can, right? Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to stop.
Even better than staying at home. Get your needle. I mean, stay at home, but get your needle.
Get your needle. I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a quick break. We are in conversation with Whitby Mayor Don Mitchell. We'll be back after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
I joined because I wanted to help others.
To be a part of something bigger.
To show my kids what's important.
I joined to make my community stronger.
To make a difference in someone's life.
To acknowledge that our freedoms come at a cost.
I joined to honor my mom.
My grandpa.
My neighbor.
Everyone who served.
Who are serving still.
I joined.
I joined.
I joined the Legion.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the community billboard.
A province-wide stay-at-home order is currently in effect. Limit trips outside the home. Remain in your local community and work from home if you are able. Visit the province's website for more information.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. Our guest this week is Whitby Mayor Don Mitchell. I want to move away from COVID. There's so much more we've got on our list to talk about. I want to get your thoughts on the toll freeze for highways 412 and 418 recently announced by the provincial government. There was quite an outcry. Why isn't it free? It should be free. They campaigned or mentioned that they wanted to make it free. What are your thoughts?
So what the MPP said during the campaign was that they would lobby to have the tolls removed. Which I suppose they've done. The problem is they're not answering the right question. The question is, why is Durham Region and Whitby treated differently from the rest of the GTHA? So for me, the debate about to toll or not to toll, that's one debate. But the debate about whether we should be treated fairly is a different debate, and they have not responded to that, the minister's response. I mean, telling me what the tolling analysis is and saying, well, the previous liberal government, set this up. They did not ever discuss with us that it was to be a toll road until they built the thing, essentially. It was always, from my perspective, a bad idea anyway. The whole lake, it just chewed up all sorts of really valuable land, and it adds almost no value to our residents, and you just could have widened Lake Ridge and solved everything. So it's been a bad deal. But the real nub, the real hurt part is, that's about 35 lane kilometers on 412, all told. After they build that, they go over to the 427 and they extend, like they build 45 new lane kilometers, a new extension. More lane kilometers, not told. I mean, what is this double standard? So what the minister should say is, we don't have to decide on tolls forever, but we're going to suspend all the tolls on 412 and 418 until we have a consistent and equitable tolling policy across the entire GTHA, and stop leaving Durham in this disadvantaged position for no reason. So obviously that means I completely disagree with the assertion that somehow freezing the tolls for a couple of years is in any way a response to the equity issue.
Well, you have a lot of people that agree with you on that one. In keeping with transit, let's discuss now the bus rapid transit route. It's been getting a lot of attention in the media, and plans for the project have now reached Whitby and what it will mean to us. For those that are unaware of what the bus rapid transit route is, what is this project?
So this project has been around for a long while. I know some people describe it as 2 years old, but actually they advanced money. There's been work done, about $70 million spent in Ajax and Pickering, all those widenings. That's essentially an early part of the bus rapid transit project. So it runs from Oshawa to Scarborough, and it runs along Highway 2, Old Highway 2, or Dundas Street in our town. So if I had my druthers, I would not want it on Dundas Street. It's that's such a narrow area, and it's the core of our historic downtown. I mean, very hard to fit in dedicated bus lanes, and our vision for our downtown core is for a walkable, safe area. Our sidewalks are already narrow, but right now, with the exception of a short time during rush hour, we have on-street parking, and that protects pedestrians. That makes the area safe. That creates opportunities for the patios and everything else, the things you see on the Brock Street Park. So, but I understand why Metrolink selected that route. I understand the business case. And, this is, as I say, 70 million spent. It's a $450 million project. They are very committed to it. And they've just said flat out, like, the route's not changing. So that's a frustration. The other part, of course, is that it is a Metrolink's decision, and they have the power to implement it, whatever Whitby Council wants. Even though we own the road now, they can take control of it and they can implement the solution. So they, they've gone through a number of options. By the way, Metrolinx has been great. I've met with them regularly. They've tried to be very responsive. I mean, they need to keep their buses running on time. This is going to carry a lot of people and is a real opportunity, economic opportunity, and especially for Whitby, because we're right in the middle of this huge corridor. But, it's a way to get a lot of people downtown and have an attractive place for them to get out and then, walk around and support everything. And quite frankly, it'll be a good way to move when buses are coming and going every 5 minutes. That's a pretty attractive way to move, if you're in walking distance of that corridor. So that's where it's at. They originally came forward with a traffic only solution, a terrible solution called option one.
Taking away all pedestrian access?
Well, they just removed the parking. So all you have is left is our narrow little sidewalks, unprotected pedestrians, just unsafe, uncomfortable. You can't make the stores accessible. Terrible solution. So in 2019, that first option came to council. Our staff said, this does not represent our vision for our downtown at all. You got to do something a lot better. So Metrolinx said, okay. So they went back and they came back with a very extreme solution. There was a big stakeholder meeting and everybody in the room kind of said, well, look at really doing something truly transformative. But it involved blocking all lanes, that's a lot of change. And it generated a lot of concern about traffic infiltration, especially into the abutting neighborhoods, which is a genuine concern. Actually, we had a report last night about putting on asphalt speed humps, which would be new to our town, about adding that to our toolkit. And we had, oh my goodness, 8 or 9 delegations, just my street too, please. This is a town-wide issue. Everyone's concerned about speeds on residential streets, about traffic infiltration, and so are those abutting residents, and that's important. But we can manage that. What we can't manage is an unsafe, unfriendly, narrow downtown with just has moving vehicles moving through it. And I was talking to someone recently who's Whitby through and through, and a big supporter of our downtown in all sorts of ways. And this person is in a mobility device. And when he heard about this option, this lot 4 live lane option, he basically said, well, that means I could never go there. It wouldn't be safe. Like I couldn't go into my downtown. That's very sad, to see that as a possibility. And I say that because that possibility is still being advocated for. And it's truly unfortunate that, the concerns about accessibility, the concerns about mobility, meeting the needs of our seniors are just being lost in this fear about traffic infiltration.
So
which
where
is
do
a real
we stand
fear.
now? Where do we
Sorry?
stand now?
So Metrolinx did a couple of options, and they allowed an eastbound lane through, which again reduced the infiltration impact, but they still moved people up to Mary Street going westbound. And I met with them again. I've met with them every couple of weeks for a long time. And I said, you have to look at, they really didn't want any merging. They wanted their bus lanes to be just bus lanes. I said, you have to review those options. I mean, people have to see it. Whether you support it or not, I mean, it's your analysis. They do this all the time. But you have to look at whether a merge option would be viable. So they went away and they did that. They came back and they said, yeah, this would work. So they brought that into a meeting that I called for April 22nd, and this is called their new refined option. So now the westbound lane merges with the bus lane between, on Dundas between Byron and Brock, which is the heart of our downtown.
Yeah.
And that allows this large public space to be added at Metrolinx's cost, I might add. So now suddenly that's a very active space. They'll make all the storefronts accessible. You can have patios, you can have cultural events. You can really animate the core of your downtown, and you can keep all the trucks and the delivery vehicles on Dundas. So there's virtually no downside at all. There's certainly no permanent downside, because the thing about traffic is it fills up anyway. If there was no BRT, even if you have a 4 live lane option, with our natural growth, it'll become fully congested and traffic will infiltrate. So, there's a risk of permanent damage and harm to our downtown by the option 1 solution. and there's no real gain, no permanent gain whatsoever. So anyway, Metrolinx gets it. They're working very hard to find a balanced solution, and they're working really hard to consult with everyone. They're going to have a meeting, I know, on May 20th, and my understanding is they're going to make a decision soon. They have to pick their alternative. I hope they will pick this current alternative. It was well received at my meeting. I mean, I wasn't as well received. People were quite critical of me, but Metrolinx was well received for this progressive alternative and balanced alternative they put forward. Notwithstanding all that positive reception immediately after the meeting, the sort of, the social media group that is opposed immediately said, well, it's not good enough. We still want the option 1 traffic only solution. So that's disappointing, but we'll just see where it goes. But certainly I myself, I'm just going to do everything I can to support our downtown, to support our downtown businesses, to support accessibility, to support our seniors. And I can't abandon all that to just turn the downtown into a drive-through traffic flow.
Yeah, it was so much easier to expand through portions of Pickering and Ajax because they don't have that kind of downtown along Dundas that Whitby has. That you're right, is so
Yeah, and that was my criticism,
the
because
shops right there.
sorry to interrupt, but I've been familiar with this for a long time. And when it started, which was way back around 2008, I said, you need to solve the hard problems first. What are you going to do through Whitby? What are you going to do through Pickering Village? What are you going to do through the narrow spots? But they went, well, no, we'll do the easy parts. Let's go to Ajax and add 6 lanes of asphalt, right? So you got a lane for everything. But all that means is they've now gathered all these vehicles onto Highway 2 when you could have widened other roads, right?
Mhm.
They've gathered them, and now suddenly they're going, and now they're knowing they're going to choke down. It was just, it was back to front. But anyway, again, that's past is past, and we have to look to the future.
Okay, you know what? We're out of time.
I told you we needed 3 hours.
I know, we need 3
Told you.
hours. We need 3 hours.
Why don't you just list all the other topics you're going to talk about?
I know. Okay, that means you're gonna have to come back. Our thanks to Whitby Mayor Don Mitchell, and thanks to you for joining us. Until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison. Stay safe, everyone.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
It's so convenient to grab a carton of milk. It took over 60 years to get to this point. It sounds odd, but if you didn't have a cow in the early 1900s, you'd rely on a family farm. The Weary family farm was one of the contributors to the production and distribution of our favorite cookie companion via scoop and pail or by bottle. Then, in the 1930s, with the demand for pasteurized milk, the Weary family partnered with 10 local farmers, raising the funds required for pasteurization technology. Ideal Dairy, the building still standing, became one of the fastest growing dairy distributors and eventually the largest and only dairy in Oshawa. In time, it was sold to Beatrice, a brand we still fill our glasses with today.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend